Alright, so today I'm going to change the front and rear pads and front rotors on my 2015 Infiniti Q50, which is right there. And first things first, got to get the GT350 out of the garage. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the Ebrake on the Q50 so that when I jack it up it doesn't want to roll back on me. I'll get it jacked up, put one jack stand under there for safety. I'm not getting under the car, so don't really need to set it on the jack stand. I'm just going to get it in place, keep it on the jack, just make things quicker. I'm going to loosen up the front lugs before I lift it, so I'm going to loosen those, get it lifted, and then we'll get started. Okay, so Q50 Jack Points. Let's take a look under the car. See if you can see. There is a notch, a couple of notches right here, and you can see I've jacked the car up a few times. This is reinforced. Yeah, sometimes they bend a little bit, or this is a lease vehicle, so not too concerned, because it's getting traded in next July. So otherwise, on the GT350, for example, I put jack bars on that car for repeated up and down to keep the frame rails in good shape. Okay, now these rotors are a little bit bent. So because they're a little bit bent, I am going to replace them. Infiniti usually will turn the rotors. They're pretty beefy, but they wanted to charge me like $45 a rotor to turn it or something like that, and a new coated rotor was like $39 on Rock Auto. So no sense in that. Might as well just put a new rotor on there. Alright, so the first step is going to be loosening these caliper bracket bolts here, which it look like maybe about a 14 millimeter. Always works smarter, not harder. Now I gotta get this caliper bracket off. Okay, 22. Get the breaker bar. You really don't want to put pressure on the hoses, so you gotta set the caliper on something so that you don't tear your brake hose or kink it or anything like that. So just got to be careful with that. Sometimes just wiggling the bracket a little bit gives you less pressure on the bolt, and it's easier to just wiggle it around until that bolt's easier to turn by hand, and you can spin it right out. And the bracket is out. Now let's check the slides. This car only has 30,000 miles on it. I mean, those slides are nice and greasy, no play in them, they're not worn out. everything's sealed up, so I'm not even going to crack that open. So what I am going to do is, the pads came with new clips and hardware here, so I'm going to put that new hardware on. Let's see if we can get this rotor off. There we go. Definitely a lot of rust. This car's winter driven, so no shocker there. But I mean, they'd be fine if they weren't a little bit bent, causing my brake to pulse. So, garbage. See all the crap that came out of the rotor when I hammered on it. Alright, I'm just laying out the hardware here to make sure I put it in properly. And all the clips, I think, are the same. The pad pulls the spring in when you slide the pads in from the outside, and that keeps tension on the pad against the caliper itself. So, because I was going to say these look a little more bent in than the new clips, but that would make sense. Okay. Got a little pair of pliers to help with this. There we go. So you just take that down into this slot, and then it'll come up and pop up. Pretty straightforward. Okay, you got to make sure that you have this arm behind that little tab there. Okay, got them all loaded up. This is all, you know, if I was going to keep this car for a long time, I would clean all these surfaces, but since the pad rides along this new clean surface, I'm not afraid that it's going to get hung up or anything like that, so I'm just going to throw them on there. But normally you could clean that up with some sandpaper if there's any rough spots. I mean, this is all fairly smooth. It might look rusty, but it's fairly smooth, and certainly if you sand it raw, it's going to rust some more. So this just pops on. You just bend up to open up, and it pops on. Okay, new clips all loaded up. Now I'm going to get the new rotor, clean that up, get it on, and throw it back together. Alright, so the pads I got are a Power Stop Extreme. This is the, what do they call it here? The Z26 Street Warrior Extreme Carbon Fiber Brake Pads. It's a carbon ceramic pad. Part number is 1736, and they're Power Stop. They were priced right, good reviews, and hopefully low brake dust. The rotors are a Durago rotor. It's a coated rotor. Let's see, here's the parts for the Durago, and you can see, you know, wrapped up, it's coated to prevent rust around the hub. So we need to get some brake cleaner and some paper towels to clean the surfaces of the rotor, because those always have oil on them to prevent surface rust, and you want to get that oil off. You don't want to contaminate your brand new pads with oil from a new rotor. I'll just spray them right in the box. Just need a little bit. A little bit goes a long way, and you just clean that surface and just remove that oil. A little bit of anti-seize around the hub here. Just, you know, it was pretty hard to get those rotors off. Again, I'm not really going to spend time cleaning this up. You can see I've anti-seized where the wheels sit on the hub in the past, but lease car, not going to be my problem per se, and it's, I mean, it's a new car. I mean, it's not going to be a problem for the next owner, but I'll put some anti-seize on there. And honestly, these bolts are so clean. Yeah, we'll throw a little on there for good measure. I usually put a little anti-seize on the caliper bolts. It just, again, makes life easier next time around. So I just coat the threads a little bit. It'll thread in there and coat the threads inside the hub. Okay, so we'll get one bolt. I think what I'll do to help here is just thread a lug on. Hopefully it'll go on far enough to hold the rotor in place. Yep. That'll make life easier for us. Alright. Should be good. So you can see, hopefully, your caliper bolts here, and up here your caliper bracket bolts. Sorry. And now we will put the let's see. Now we'll put the we'll load the caliper. Well, we'll load the bracket here actually. Now this came with some brake lubricant, which I might as well use, and I'm going to lubricate all 4 contact points for where the caliper, or the pad, sorry, is going to make contact with the caliper. That's the caliper is going to slide from the action of the the pads are going to slide in these seats. So you definitely want to lubricate those so you don't get any like, you know, squealing or any kind of sound when you're applying the brake. The one with this wear sensor here should go on the inside, is my understanding. That's how it came off, and I don't know if it matters if it's on the outside, but I'm going to go ahead and put it on the inside. I'm going to apply more of the quiet lubricant. See, they never give you enough, in my opinion, to the back where the pistons are going to make contact with this back plate. Again, to just quiet it. Get some more of this stuff. This is what I've always used, the CRC disc brake quiet. It's always worked very well. You don't want to touch the surface of the pad either. Because you'll contaminate it with grease, oils from your skin. So I'm going to just be generous here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you definitely want a good coating on there. So what we're going to do now is compress the pistons on the caliper. This is a very handy tool which allows you to compress the caliper pistons very easily. Let's get our caliper over here. Load it up. Okay. Get that camera here. Now you should be able to see as I squeeze that piston is going back. That's what we want. Pretty much all the way back right there. Release. Now we can load. So what we're probably going to have to do is a little bit of trickery here. I think what I'm going to do is get the back of this pad set up. So I can get it into position, put the backside in, stick the caliper on, kind of cockeyed there, and then pop this pad in, and then get the caliper all the way on in one shot. So this should be interesting. Now I'm holding that pad. Install this pad. Here we go. Okay, that's the trick. If you only have two hands, that is the trick to having four. And we will get these puppies in. Okay. So that side is done. I'm going to pump up the brake to bring those pistons out, and then I'm going to do the other side. Then we'll move to the back. Once are done, and it is time to do the rears. I've backed the car in. I'm going to get a couple pieces of wood to put in front of the front tires, because of course there is no emergency brake for the front. We don't want the car rolling forward while we're working on it. I'm going to lift the rear probably from the differential, so I can just get both of them off the ground in one shot. And yeah, so I'll break the wheels loose on the ground, lugs on the wheels loose on the ground, block the front, jack it up, pull the wheels, and then we'll get started on the rear brakes. Now, let's get some brakes going. take a look at what we've got here. So definitely, you know, not totally gone, but they're getting there. And the rotors look fine, and they feel smooth. So yeah, just gonna change that back out. So it looks like 14mm bolts here again, and this time we won't have to remove the carrier bracket because the pads will slide right out once we have the caliper off. So we'll have to check the conditions of the slides, maybe re-lubricate. I mean, they look pretty good. Definitely not rusty or anything like that, so we'll just add a little grease in there and they should be good to go. That one looks good too. Cool. Means our boots aren't leaking. And okay, notice here, one of them has a spring ring on it at the end. This black ring, that was the top slide, so we need to make sure that that goes back into the top. Alright, let's get our caliper. Okay. That looks good. Smooth. No issues there. We'll just have to compress that piston. I think I can set that right up here on this frame member, subframe member in the back. Very convenient caliper holding location there. It's about time. It's definitely time left, but like I said, I'm turning this car in next July. I'm definitely going to need the pads. Might as well get it all done now and be done. So that's the plan. And yep. About time. That wear sensor was getting ready to scream on that one. So, hardware from Power Stop. Now these are not the Z26. These are Z17 1393. So not as aggressive as the fronts, but ceramic nonetheless. A lot of rusty. Alright, let me see if I can find some sandpaper. That was easy, cleaned right up. Get the new hardware on, get it lubed up, and should be in good shape. So same as the front, the sensor pad, which has that tab on it, it's going to go on the inside. So I'm going to lubricate. I highly recommend this tool. It makes this job so much easier. I'll leave a link to this in the I'll leave a link to this tool in the description below. Very, very, very useful, very much a time saver. Just makes quick work of this, which can be a pain without the right tool. And done. So fast. Piston all the way back. Perfect. Okay. Okay, you can see they sit right in there. Nice and easy. Slides right in. No spring clips like the front, so we don't have to do a Houdini trick. We don't have to do a Houdini in order to get the pads in, get the caliper on. Much easier in the back. Okay, and you want to make sure they're all the way in, otherwise your caliper is not going to go on very easily. Alright. Now some of you are probably saying, oh, you need to resurface that rotor. Well, you're not wrong, but it is very often not required. There's nothing wrong with the surface of these rotors. They're very smooth, they're not grooved, there's no washboard, you can feel across the surface, perfectly smooth. So these pads should bed right in really with no issue. And I don't have grease for this. I'm guessing there's a lot of grease in there since everything was all sealed up, so I'm just going to put them in. And I do recommend getting the right grease, and I'll figure out what that is, and I'll put that in the description. Because you really should add a little bit of grease in there. Okay, and then once we get these tight, we'll have to get our plastic boot, our rubber boot here, seated properly. There's a lip, and we definitely want it over that lip, making a good seal. As not to let any grease out and to keep contaminants. Okay, that one popped right on. You know, you don't want to jab these with a screwdriver or something like that and then tear the boot. That's definitely not a good idea. So you just have to use your fingers and work it forward. Sometimes just doing this with the caliper will get it to just pop right on. Oh, and we are seated over here as well, so everything looks good. Okay, so you can see there's play there because the piston is fully compressed. Now I'm going to go pump the brake, and then we'll see what that looks like. Okay, tight. So that's good. We're ready to throw our wheel back on and move to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that wheel on now. I always load up my impact gun with the first lug nut, so that way I don't have the wheel on, not trying to hold the wheel, load a lug nut. It just makes life a little bit easier. always want to tighten in a star pattern, so always go across. That ensures that the rim gets evenly seated to the hub, and your torque then, you know, same thing when you torque, go in a star across. I usually go back, check it twice, make sure it's good. All right, crank out the other side, and it's a pretty easy job. All right, got the rear right brakes all done, the wheel on, and I'm gonna finish the car up. But any questions, put them in the comments below. Pretty easy job. You don't need any special tools. Like I said, the brake caliper piston spreader tool is very handy, very useful. But other than that, you know, basic stuff. So thanks for watching. See ya.